Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Proverbs Guys Ministries. We have a very special guest with us this evening. In my opinion, the greatest defender of creationism that has ever lived, especially in our lifetime. So it's a great honor to have Dr. Kent Hovind in the house with us. How are you doing, Doc?
Well, thank you. I don't know about the greatest creationist that ever lived, but thank
I
you,
do.
brother. I enjoy doing all this.
Hey,
Thank you
so
for being with us.
your main channel is going to be back up in a few days. Is that right?
We never know. The atheists are always finding something to pick at and get us taken down for any reason. Okay, so let's see, 10, enter. Nope, there. We have quite a few different channels. We put them all linked on drdino.com, DRDINO. There's one called Dr. Kent the Science Gent, after my coffee cup. Okay, that's a new channel. Doc Dino, Genesis Baptist Church was taken down for a week, and then they took it down the next day for 2 weeks. So it should be up, in a couple of days?
Well, they took it down for 2 weeks after the week was up.
Yeah, so how much longer till it goes back up?
About a second right now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I do a lot of debates with atheists. Anyway, we're on a lot of different stuff besides YouTube because they're constantly giving us a hard time. On Rumble and Odyssey and all this kind of stuff. There's all the YouTube channels and even more. Isn't there another one?
Yeah. Facebook is a really big one.
Facebook and TikTok.
I can't help but notice that the more you preach the gospel, the harder they try to take you out. Have you noticed that pattern?
Well, see, they can't answer the question, so they silence the messenger.
Amen.
I don't like that telegram. Shoot the messenger.
Amen.
That's been that way all through history.
Now, Doc, could you give us maybe your 3 biggest points on why evolution doesn't work, why it can't work?
Well, I've done 343 debates now with atheists, and the thing you have to first decide what are we discussing? What exactly do you mean by evolution? Because this is what's critical. The first thing I do is I say, oh, look, guys, there are 6 different meanings of that word evolution. There is cosmic evolution. That would be the Big Bang. There's no evidence for that. We talk about that if you'd like. Chemical evolution, where the hydrogen from the Big Bang produced gold, silver, and platinum. I'd like to know how to do that. Stellar evolution, organic evolution, macroevolution, all those are purely religious. Nobody sees any of that happen. Then microevolution is a lousy word. They shouldn't use that, but we do, and they do. So that's a variation within the same kind. The Bible says 24 times in the first 7 chapters, they will bring forth after their kind. Nobody's ever got a good definition of species. There are 26 different definitions of species. Look at that, a kind, a type, a sort. Wow, okay. A kind or sort. So the first thing you have to do is settle exactly what are we talking about. When someone says, I believe in evolution, what exactly do you mean by that? You mean dogs and wolves have a common ancestor? And chihuahuas and Great Danes? I agree. You mean dogs and bananas have a common ancestor? No, that I don't agree. So what are we talking about? And then secondly, I've learned if you take away time, I just finished a program on our channel about the age of the earth and how oil pressure was formed. But still oil pressure in the ground. All the oil was made during Noah's flood. But time is the pacifier that keeps them quiet. Ask them, how can an amoeba turn to a human? Why do you guys have these family trees showing everything related? How did this amoeba turn to a human, a ladybug, a dinosaur? They'll say, well, give it enough time. It's always their answer. That's their that's their magic wand. Go ahead.
Well, it's great because every time we get close to disproving their theories, they add a couple billion years just to make it harder for us to do so. Let's jump into Darwin. Can you give us like your reasons on why we cannot find Darwin credible or why we shouldn't find him credible?
Charles Darwin, his only degree he ever got was in theology. Okay, he was a loser, sit around, didn't watch TV back then. He watched his belly button or whatever they did back in those days. But Charlie Darwin was a dud. His dad couldn't find him a job anywhere. So his dad was a medical doctor. And his dad had a friend of his said, will you please take my son on a voyage for 5 years around the world in the HMS Beagle? So he did. They stayed at these islands, Galapagos Islands off the coast of South America. And Darwin hated birds. He shot every bird he could find because he liked worms. He thought worms were sweet and birds ate them. That's mean. So he shot the birds. Okay. And he collected these birds on the Galapagos Islands. And he noticed their beak shape was different. Some had a heavy beak, some had a skinny beak. Right? Those that had a heavy beak lived on an island where the only food to eat was a tough nut to crack. You got to have a heavy beak or you can't crack the nut.
Right.
So those who couldn't crack the nut would move on to a different island or die. So Darwin studied these birds, shot a bunch of them, collected them into piles of 14 different species. And then he said, I believe all these 14 kinds of finches had a common ancestor. I would agree, Charlie. It was a bird. And then he said, this proves birds are related to bananas. He didn't say those words, but that's the charts they used. Here we have birds being related to pine trees, worms, jellyfish. These kind of family trees are stupid, real stupid. This isn't science. This is propaganda. So Darwin wrote this book right here after his voyage, The Origin of Species, by means, but the whole title, they don't cover the whole title normally. They're kind of embarrassed by that. There it is right here. The Origin of Species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Some races are favored more than others. Oh, yeah. Charlie was quite the racist, okay? That's another long story. But yeah, Charlie Darwin was, he didn't discover anything of any value to science. He discovered there are variations within the kind. Well, God said they'd bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody's ever seen. Dogs produce dogs, cows produce cows. There are no exceptions. 450 breeds of cows might have had a common ancestor called a cow. That's what the Bible says would happen. Nobody's ever seen a cow produce a non-cow. So Darwin really is a dud as a scientist, didn't discover anything. But people are so desperate to get God out of their life, they'll jump on Darwin and say, oh, what a great scientist he was. Guys, he was a preacher who couldn't get a job anywhere, and his dad had his friend take him around unpaid for 5 years. Would you please feed my boy? 5 years he sailed around on board the Beagle just so he could get a place to sleep and food to eat. That's my humble opinion.
Well, and the really interesting thing about that, Dr. Hovind, is Darwin never quit being a preacher. He just changed religions.
Wow, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yep. Now, my question for you is, because for the life of me, I can't figure out, I'm hoping you can explain this to us. We observe variations within kind, what they would refer to as microevolution. How then can they jump to macroevolution? How did they get there?
More time. We have time and more time. They'll say, if we see these little changes from a Great Dane to a Chihuahua, etc., don't you think that proves they could come from an amoeba over billions of years? Well, no. First place, it's not science because it's not observable. Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Knowledge gained from observation, experiments to describe the world. Has anybody ever observed a dog produce a non-dog? No. It's imagination. It's SpongeBob. That's all it is. That's why they like video games. It puts them into this fantasy world. Whoa, just imagine. It's stupid. Tell them I said so, okay?
All right, Doctor, we have Mark Reed in the backstage. He's the only atheist willing to come on at the moment. So if you would like, we'll bring him on. And sure. Mark, I'll say this, and then we'll move on, and we'll allow you to start back and forth. When Dr. Hovind's talking, I'm going to mute you. And then when he's done talking, I'm going to mute him, and I will unmute you, okay?
Okay, that's fair.
All right, so I'm going to mute Dr. Hovind, and Mark, you can go ahead and start a line of questioning if you'd like.
I didn't know I'd be the only atheist on there. Yeah, so Darwin did get a lot of things wrong. He got a lot of things right too. So it's a mistake to say that sort of, he was this, that, and the other. I think sort of bad-mouthing somebody that's dead and contributed a lot to science is kind of not probably what you want to do. But that's up to you. So I found myself intrigued by this as sort of evolution versus creationism. So really what I wanted to get into was how creationism explains all of this stuff.
Creation is like communism, Nazism. The ism should go on evolution. It's evolutionism. It's a dangerous religion. It's a cult, okay? And creation would explain God made the animals, probably 8,000 or 10,000 different kinds, I'm guessing at a number, and he gave them the ability in their complex gene code to produce a variety of offspring. One human couple can have 10 kids, and they're all different. Now, dogs can produce a variety of dogs. So the dog breeders all know there are limits to how they can get. They can get a great big dog or a little bitty dog, and all the dogs probably came from a wolf. I don't think anybody argues with that. So the wolf, the coyote, the dog are all interfertile. They can interbreed. You get coy wolves and coy dogs and wolf dogs, okay? So the banana, though, is not in there. God said 24 times they would bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody's ever seen. So the creationist would say, God created the dog kind and gave it a flexible gene code that can produce 400 varieties of dogs. But there's a limit. It's still dog. You evolutionists want to see the observable evidence for variation and extrapolate in your mind to say, wow, that proves dogs and mosquitoes are related. That's dumb. Okay, go ahead.
Well, see, it's not just that we see these variations and decide that's the case. There's also a lot of converging lines of evidence to back it up, such as genetic evidence, the fossil record. There's a whole long line of evidence that points to the same outcome. But what I really asked you didn't actually answer, which was how does creationism account for this? And evolution isn't evolutionism. It isn't a religion like that. There's no God. Like, what's the God of religion? Where do they meet? What's this faith? Like, what are their tenets, kind of thing? Time isn't a god. It's part of space, Kent. It's not a god. Like, what are you talking? Nobody worships time unless you're worshipping time somewhere in the back room somewhere. That's not happening. So, but I asked how creationism accounts for things. Have you seen something produce a dog out of nothing? Can you show me a dog being produced by a god out of nothing, please? Because you demand that to see that happening in real time in front of you to prove evolution. Why don't you show me a god creating an organism out of nothing right now so you can show me?
All right, let's let him answer that.
Fair question. This is a whole crux of the matter. You hit it right on the head, Mark. I cannot. I believe God created the universe. God created everything. I believe God did it. And I admit, I take that on faith. You guys do not admit that you take on faith these family trees where a protozoa turned to a dog. You won't admit that. You think it's science, even though it's never observed. I admit I've never seen God create a dog. I've never seen God create anything. I believe by faith God created everything out of nothing. You guys believe by faith that it all came from a dot of nothing, or near nothing, expanding rapidly, and you won't admit it's a religion. It's nothing but a religion, Mark. Nothing but it. Give it up. Go ahead.
Over and over, but you actually haven't demonstrated it's a religion because you haven't demonstrated any worship system, any kind of god, any kind of anything like this. You can hold up a thing saying time, but no one worships time. That's completely wrong. So yeah, you're absolutely 100% wrong on that. You just want it to be a religion. Now, we've never seen Pluto go around the sun either, but we know that will happen in the future. It's called induction, which is the basis of the methodological naturalism, which is the scientific method. It's basically doing experimentation, tests, observations, and then using a process in order to know what will happen in the future and making, and this is really important, novel testable predictions, which has been done. I'll point to the Archaeopteryx, I'll point to Tiktaalik, I'll point to, there's been so many novel testable predictions that is made that have all come true. And we've actually seen speciation happening in the case of certain very short-term organisms.
Can we let him address what you just unloaded, Mark?
Sure.
It was all on point, but it was quite a bit.
One topic at a time. Okay, which one? Just one. Which one do you want to talk about?
Mark, could you give one of those?
40 topics on the table.
So when you keep saying science is something that we observe and see,
Mark, if you could though, just one of those topics, could we?
Okay, we'll address that we don't see Pluto going around the sun. We have to use induction,
all right,
which is part of the scientific.
Fair enough. Dr. Hoven, if you could explain that.
I agree. We observe Pluto moving in a direction that eventually would lead it around our sun, and who knows how long, but we've never observed that. You are correct. That is logical induction. We don't know of anything that would change Pluto's orbit. It seems to be gravitationally locked with us, and centrifugal force flinging it around. Where that force came from is another question. But I think that would be logical to say Pluto is probably going to go around the sun in whatever it is, 240 years or something. Okay, I don't know. Don't care. We've never observed dogs produce anything but a dog. All we've seen is they run into a brick wall. They get a big dog, a little dog, but they can't get one any bigger or smaller. There seems to be a limit. So if to equate the science behind Pluto moving and this protozoa turning to a biology teacher is ludicrous. We don't ever see protozoa produce anything but a protozoa. If you wish to believe it happened, that's fine. And if the word religion is too strong for you, I'm sorry, but you're these charts are based on belief, not science. We don't observe a starfish being related to a flatworm and a mollusk and a butterfly. This is not science. It's not observable. All we've ever observed in all of history is everything brings forth after its kind. Any farmer in the planet will tell you all they've ever seen: cows make cows, dogs make dogs, corn grows corn. You might get 200 and 500 or 2,000 varieties of corn, but it's still corn. But you guys want us to pay. You want us to pay for all the kids to learn that corn and cows are related to a common ancestor. Do you believe you have a common ancestor with corn, Mark?
Now, Mark, you can feel free to
stick to
answer
one
this.
topic at a time, please? That was so many topics.
All right. Also, Mark, I want to let you know Beamsy is in the house also, so you're not alone. So either you can respond or you can allow Beamsy to chime in. I'll let you choose.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah, so you said that sort of we observe Pluto and we can sort of use induction to tell that's going around the sun. I totally agree with that. We can do that. And we do that for evolution. We see the changes occurring on a microevolutionary level. We've seen them even occurring, as I said, speciation, so getting into macroevolution. And we can also see the evidence from genetic markers and things that are shared between, say, us and fish, kind of thing. We can see the evolutionary markers. That also converges with the physiology that we have shared between us and these organisms. So we do see that. And the fact that you don't understand genetics and how these things like sort of match one another doesn't make it untrue. This is basically an argument from incredulity. Kent says, well, I can't believe this. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We've got tons of scientific evidence pointing in that direction from multiple fields that all converge. And I might add, we do make testable predictions that show that to be the case, that evolution did happen, it is happening, and will happen into the future. Just as we can tell that Pluto went round the sun, is going round the sun, and will go round the sun in the future.
All right, let's let Dr. Hovind respond to that.
Okay, I make testable predictions also. I predict if you crossbreed your cows, you will get a baby cow. Then if you let that grow up and get married, it'll produce a baby cow. I predict no matter how hard you try, you will never. There's now 400 varieties of cows. Some give more milk, some have more beef, some can stand the heat better, stand the cold better. I predict if you interviewed every farmer on the planet, you would find all of them would say cows produce cows and nothing else. Nothing else. Every dog breeder on the planet will tell you dogs produce dogs. Some are dumber than others, some are smarter than others, some can be trained to, go herd the sheep, but they're all dog. I predict no matter who you interview on the planet, what we've observed with human history is they bring forth after their kind. Anything other than that is imagination. You believe it. Now, I do understand genetics. What we see is some similarity in the gene code of different animals. That's not proof of a common ancestor. That's proof of a common creator. The same guy wrote the code. There's a really complex line of code, probably billions of lines of DNA code, just to make you flex your fingers. Okay? I think monkeys also flex their fingers. They might have the same lines of code to do the same thing. Doesn't prove a common ancestor. It proves a common guy wrote the code. Microsoft Word has millions of lines identical to Microsoft PowerPoint. Right. Same guys wrote the code. Has nothing to do with evolution. This is where you imagine that it proves an ancestry, and you want to name off a bunch of branches of science like that's supposed to prove something. Genetics are mind-boggling complexity, and they had to be designed. And you're running from that designer, Mark. I feel sorry for you, but go ahead.
All right, Mark, I'm going to allow you to respond
again. Can we do one
again.
topic at a time, please? I mean, if we're doing one topic at a time, then stick to one topic at a time. I don't know how this got into coding and stuff. But one person didn't write Microsoft Word. It was written by a team. Like, nobody just writes something, Ken. It just shows you know nothing about programming. And, the human genome is not a computer program. In fact, it reads more like an instruction set. But that aside, like biological things are different. It doesn't work like that. You're not duplicating machine code with inherent mutations in order to change it, basically. And the whole idea of a cows didn't used to be cows. Cow used to be an auroch, which is an extinct animal that doesn't exist anymore. So when you say cow gives birth to a cow, it's just a label that you're using. It's just a catch cry. It doesn't mean anything. We just made it up. We made up the name of it. And if it changes significantly in the future, we might not call it a cow. But this is the conflation you make. You sort of want it to change within one lifetime. And then you demand this to be happening. But what my original question was is, how does creationism account? Because this is versus creationism. But you've basically said, hey, I believe it for no reason whatsoever, and then just decide to go with that. Whereas we're presenting the genetic evidence. We've got ERVs linking things together. We've got taxonomy linking things together. We've got embryology linking things together. We've got everything, and you've got nothing, literally nothing.
All right.
Dr. Hogan. Rattling on and on and on again, one topic at a time. First place, the computer code is binary. The genetic code is quaternary. Thousands of times more complex, the genetic code, the DNA code in everybody's body. The DNA from one person, each chromosome, if you unwound it and stretched it out, would be about 6 feet long. You have 100 trillion cells in the average human body. They say if you took all the chromosomes from one person, stretched them out, tied them together, it would go across the solar system twice. That's the code to make a human being. And it's able to reproduce itself when you make babies. It's amazing that we can still even walk and talk after all the generations this have gone through, because you're from your parents and their grandparents and great-grandparents, you go back. So the genetic code is much more complex than a computer code. It's just an analogy to help people try to understand. Because there are similarities in a computer code, it could be they're doing the same thing to the computer, telling it to change the screen brightness or something, okay? The genetic code of man to be able to flex your fingers, and of the ape to flex his fingers, and the bird to flex his claws around the branch. Might be a lot of similar lines of code to tell the muscles to contract. Has nothing to do with common ancestry. I don't know how you guys can't see it.
Okay, so how did ERVs get into us, the viral sequences that are unique to that virus and that position, get into us and into fish? Because that cannot happen by chance. It can't, not to the degree that they're infected into the genome. So basically, you've got to say that either God designed us with some kind of viral element already in there for some reason. I'd like to know why that is and how you can tell that and what sort of experiments you've done to test that. Or the more sort of, parsimonious explanation, which is that we once had a common ancestor whose germline was infected by a virus. Like, why do they share that common trait of having viral DNA in the exact same spot and location? What part of the design is that, Ken? Explain that to me.
Well, I cover ERVs quite often in my seminar here. Human DNA code, 50 million to 250 million base pairs, each chromosome. That's a complex code. It's like a long twisted ladder. And I think they're finding more and more the ERVs have a function, similar function. They're not viruses. It's a bad thing to call them. Biological level, main difference, bacteria and free living cells, while viruses are non-living collection of molecules that need a host to survive. So we know now there are beneficial viruses present in our gut, skin, and blood that can kill undesirable bacteria and dangerous viruses. So this has all been known. Here's an article. Different people have written on this topic. I think the ERV shows you guys desperation to run from God. ERVs, evolutionists claim the human chromosomes were infected many years, different viruses, which then multiplied. Then as some of these sections of virus-like DNA were shown to be functional, they claimed they had become tamed. They've been functional all along. I think you need to learn some biology, Mark. I think there's a lot more to ERVs than you realize. They're abundant in mammal genomes. ERV sequences initially got their name because they showed strong similarity to viruses. They proclaimed the animal genome evolved to their present state. And they called it DNA, junk DNA. I don't think there's any such thing. As research on ERVs progressed, it became apparent many of these genomic features were not junk, but important for the mammal's survival, and such as placental development. So you can Google it for yourself and research all this, but no, I think you're mistaken. ERVs are not necessarily junk DNA. They're not necessarily bad. They are necessary for different developmental functions. So they're finding more and more ERVs are important. So the fact that there are similarities in our DNA, our ERVs, where they're located on the genome, and I mean, what if the code to make fingers flex was on page 75 of the gene code, and the code for the monkey to flex his fingers is on page 75? Well, it still wouldn't prove common ancestor. It's a common designer. Why are you running from him? He loves you, but he's going to be your judge one day. I'm sorry, new topic. Go ahead. Anybody else? Is there other people? I mean, it's your program. But
there is. So, Mark, we will come back to you, I promise, but I want to give Beamsy a chance to get in here also. So, Beamsy, I'm going to unmute you now, just in case. Well, you can unmute. Just in case you're unaware of the rules, when Dr. Hoban's speaking, I will have everyone else muted. And then when you're speaking, I will mute Dr. Hoban. So, Beamsy, if you have a question now, you can begin.
Are you fine with the question I put into the chat before? I gave it to you so you could actually review it, if that was a fine question to ask.
Go ahead and ask it, and if it's inappropriate or something, we'll just say so.
Mr. Hoban, when you actually give your presentation and you give the 6 types of evolution, within the second one, you say, of chemical evolution, we have never been able to make any of the elements within the lab. How would you explain where the artificial Achilles come from? The stuff like Neptunium, Americanum, and Californium?
I'm not understanding because of your dialect, I think. Are you asking how? I do say cosmic evolution, there's no evidence for that. A chemical evolution, you would have to have all of the elements come from the hydrogen gas that came from the Big Bang. According to the theory, the hydrogen Big Bang produced hydrogen and oxygen. I mean, hydrogen and a little tiny bit of lithium, helium, and and you can't fuse past iron. So my question is, how can you claim all the elements of our periodic table came from hydrogen gas? I'd like to learn how to make gold out of hydrogen gas. That'd be cool. So I'm just claiming this chemical evolution is a necessary step because your Big Bang, in theory, would only produce hydrogen, helium, and a tiny bit of lithium. How do we get all these elements? You guys want to just blow past it when you can't fuse past iron. So they just want to say, well, it happened because we're here. I can say, well, God did it, so we're here. So that's why I say you guys believe very strongly. I admire your faith, but you believe this happened by chance. And it doesn't. It can't happen. I think the evidence for chemical evolution is 0. None.
Beamsy?
Okay, thank you. Yes, we actually do fuse past iron. It can fuse all the way up to uranium occurring naturally. That's why we find it in the ground. But to fuse further is what we've actually been able to do in the lab using particle accelerators. With particle accelerators, it actually converts the atoms into plasma, and the plasmas become plasmoids. The plasmoids are then fused and then allowed to cool. This is where we get the highly radioactive elements that decay down incredibly quickly, like Americanum. These only occur inside laboratories, and they are recognized as an element that it can occur naturally in the correct nuclear synthesis.
Intelligent scientists with a whole bunch of really expensive equipment can fuse these things together. Therefore, it happened by chance. Is that good logic? And I say, you're welcome to believe this, but this isn't observed in nature. If you have to have a star to produce the heat and energy to squeeze the elements, well, then where'd the star come from? You got a chicken and an egg problem. You got to have the star to make the heat to produce the elements, and where'd the star and the heat come from? You guys have no answer for where time came from, where matter came from, where energy came from. No answer at all. That's why it's a religion, and you're welcome to have it. I don't care what religion you have, but I resent paying for it to be taught like it's part of science. Evolution is a religion that should belong in private schools, not in public schools. Not. I can't understand. Was that his question? Did I answer it? I'm having a hard time understanding him.
I think that was his question. It was something about Americanus and Californius, and I have a feeling it was going to be followed up with Florida and Georgia-is. Beamsy, was there another follow-up question, or do you want me to hand it back over to Mark?
Oh, you're welcome to hand it to Mark. It's just that my question was, in regards to your presentation, you have said that we've never been able to do it, but we do it on a regular basis. We're using atomic accelerators. But if you would like me to answer your question of where the star comes from, I can, but it will take about an hour or two of explanations.
All right. Well, we don't have 2 hours, so I think I'll hand it back over to Mark. And Mark, you can begin your next line of questioning.
Yeah, so I'd like to go into Phoenix Rising, where we've gotten an ERV and basically taken it back to a state where it can provide do viral elements. So how would you explain that section of genetic code can be reactivated into a virus when you're saying, hey, they were created kind of thing? Why can we reactivate some of these sequences? In the case of Phoenix Rising, it was HERVK. Why can we reactivate that into a virus if it wasn't a virus, if it is this designed thing?
Understanding your British accent there, but you say we, meaning somebody in the laboratory, can do something and reactivate it. Again, you're talking about a creator, an intelligent person doing this. Does it happen just on its own, or you just believe it did long ago and far away, like SpongeBob? It's both of you guys are counting on a laboratory and a lot of intelligent people and a lot of expensive equipment to do these things. You said, we do it all the time in the lab. That's, again, proof of creation. How don't you get it? Cover ERVs. There's long, interesting articles on ERVs and how they may not be viruses at all, and they certainly may have a function, many of them. A lot of it's not understood. We just don't know yet. Put a 10-year-old under the hood of your car and say, take out anything it doesn't need. He doesn't know what any of it does. He's going to take it all out. I think our knowledge of the really complex human anatomy and the human genome is primitive compared to where it needs to be. So before we jump to a wild conclusion that we're related to a potato, I think we better really study a little more. If there are similarities, there could be a common designer. That would be my answer. We don't know for sure it's a common ancestor. You guys wish to believe that, and so you choose that belief, but it's not science.
Mark?
Yeah, so you didn't answer my question at all. Why can we get some of these or one of these sort of ERVs and reactivate it into viruses if it was designed into it? I don't think you have a problem with my accent. I don't have an English accent. It's Australian. So, you know, seriously, it's you don't have a problem hearing me unless you don't want to answer a question, I think. So I think maybe it's selective hearing there. Basically, you haven't answered the question of why we have these viruses and we can reactivate them into viruses when they have been dormant. And we also have examples of where a viral element has provided, we've seen it go dormant and provide beneficial immunoresponses for the host that it is in. So how do you explain that we have seen a virus provide immunoresponses and become dormant, providing a benefit for your host, co-option of that viral element? How do you explain that?
That's an amazing design. If it can come reactivated just there to help us at a time of need when some bacteria invades our body, all of a sudden this virus comes to our aid. I think maybe it was designed. Just like somebody's designed to have, safety measures in their car, seatbelt. You don't need it till you get in a crash. And wow, good thing they put that in there. There's a long article about retroviruses, if you're determined to stick on that topic, on Institute for Creation Research, ICR. I highly recommend you read from the creation side how they explain what these viruses are and endogenous retroviruses. First of all, as I've said, we're finding out many of them have functions and they're not viruses, they're not bad. And if there are similarities, maybe because all the organisms face the same dangers in nature. I think a lot of animals and people and animals have hair, for instance, because it's a handy thing to have, okay? I think some have skin covering to keep their guts on the inside. It works good. I think you find a lot of cars and trucks have round tires. These are things, the fact that we have similarities, again, even in ERVs, is not evidence of a common ancestor. It could just as easily be the same guy wrote the code, and we don't even understand that code completely yet, and we better hold off on judgment. Okay?
Okay, fantastic. So you acknowledge that they are viruses, external viruses that infected the human genome. You acknowledge that that's the case by saying that, which is fantastic, because the only way that that virus could be in exactly the same place in the genome, the exact same virus over us and thousands and, millions of other organisms, is if that germline, the sperm or the egg, was infected by that virus, if they are external and what you're saying is true. So you acknowledge that they're external. They must have been infected in a germline because that's the only way a virus can endogenize throughout the entire genetic sequence of the body. So this is where science says, hey, this is how we know this is true. Because in order for that to happen, either those random infections happened in exactly the same spot on the genome, just by random chance, like billions and billions of time, or there was a common ancestor. So thank you for acknowledging that that's not a part of design. It's viruses infecting the genome. I want to thank you for that.
And don't put words in my mouth. I do not know that they're viruses in many cases, okay? They turn out to have a useful function. So I did not say that. I didn't acknowledge any of that garbage you just spilled, okay? So I think, again, if there are similarities, even in the placement of these ERVs, as they're now called, could, again, prove the creatures have gone through the common trial or test of their endurance. Maybe they had to have it at that particular spot. I don't know. I don't think we know enough about it to be dogmatic either way. My point is, these things are, I think, designed as part of the original gene code, and they work great. Everything seems to be doing pretty good. Now, if you wish to believe they have a common ancestor, which you obviously do wish to believe that, go for it. But admit it's a belief, it's not science. That's all.
All right, Mark, do you want to respond, or do you want to get Beamsy back in?
I'd like to respond, please.
Go ahead.
So you're kind of walking it back there, because I sort of asked how we know, like how we can reactivate this into viruses. Now you're saying they're not viruses, kind of thing, even though the evidence is completely contrary to what you've said, because we've reactivated HERVK, and I can get you a paper on that. We've Phoenix Rising, we've reactivated one into a virus, into something that is a virus. So the fact that you're now saying, well, I don't know they're viruses, the virologists know they're viruses. They have the structure of a virus. We've reactivated into a virus. Everything's like screams. We've seen viruses, retroviruses become beneficial. We've got that evidence too. We see that in front of us. This is where, when you say, hey, you've never seen this. Yeah, we have. We absolutely have. It's just that you're basically saying, even though we've got this massive amount of evidence that viruses do this, we can reactivate them into viruses. We've seen viruses become beneficial and provide immunoresponses for people. You're saying, hey, show me something else. And it's like, well, we don't need to. That's all the genetic evidence we need. And that's just one tiny section of evidence that we have. This is just because you don't know about this evidence, and you haven't read up on this evidence, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does.
Thankful you acknowledged my position, Mark. You said we've seen them become beneficial. Wow. So they had a use after all, didn't they? Okay. I don't want to talk about ERVs anymore. You get some of the experts at ICR, the biologist, Frank Sherwin, good friend of mine. He's a longtime biology expert, and he will tell you about ERVs. I'm more into the entry-level stuff for creation evolution, but I got plenty of stuff on ERVs. I just don't want to waste time on it, because we're going to lose 80% of the audience. So if that's all you've got, you hang on to that. But I'm saying it's just the fact that you said we've seen them become beneficial. Wow. Might have been designed. I think, a wrench can be used as a hammer if you get desperate to pound a nail in. I think the fact that we have a complex gene code that can adapt to various situations and stresses in the environment is pretty cool design. I love my designer. Talk to him all the time. I pray for you, actually, to meet him. Steve?
All right. Yes, Mark?
Question. I just have a clarification. So you think that the virus, was it some sort of miracle that got the virus in the same position in all of the genomes?
Mark, he wanted to move on to a different topic, though, and that's still on the same ERVs.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll just sum up and basically say, hey, some sort of miracle obviously occurred that got the virus into the same position. So, I mean, you can be a science denier all you want, Kent, but this is the science that they're unraveling in virology. And I mean, you can sort of say, hey, I think it was all designed that way. Okay, but it still doesn't solve the question of how they actually got into us and fish. Like, even if somebody did design a virus, it doesn't actually solve the problem.
All right. Point noted. Dr. Hoven did say that that's not his area of specialty. So we'll move
that's
on.
fine. I was just summing up. Sure.
Well, Stephen,
yes, sir.
He called me a science denier. I am no such thing. I love science. You are a God denier. Okay. You can choose that position if you'd like. I think that'll not work out good for you someday. But I love science. Evolution isn't science. We never see a dog produce a non-dog or a cow produce a non-cow. Never. You guys are living in SpongeBob imagination world, thinking everything's related to a common ancestor. and you got these incredibly complex ERVs, and you think that's evidence that it happened by chance? Anyway, talk to Frank Sherwin, go to ICR if you want a more complex answer. But my answer would be, first of all, let's go to a different topic. I think they're not evidence of evolution at all. Okay.
I'm going to bring Beamsy in. Beamsy, you can unmute if you have another line of questioning.
I've got two, but I apologize if this is a bit of a silly question, but with your sand toy, is that a multi-sedimented layering, or is that just a single sedimentary?
Is there
He's
a
saying that sand toy on your desk, the one where you can shift the layers and it forms. He's asking if that's what?
Is it multi-sediment, or is that just one sediment dyed?
I don't know. I didn't know how to make the thing. I would assume it's probably several different densities, because the moving things automatically separate by density, by particle shape, by friction with the water. There's a lot of factors involved in separating. But I think if you look at the video experiments in stratification done in Colorado many years ago, you will see that multiple layers can form very quickly, and they form horizontally, not vertically. The top layer is not younger. The layers are forming sideways with tidal pumping. The moon pulling the tide up and down, actually holding the tide while we spin under it, is causing the water to rush in and out of that tidal bump every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes. And it's a sideways movement of bazillions of gallons of water that's going to form all the layers in one big flood called Noah's flood. So I think the evidence is overwhelming that all the layers form quickly. That's why we have petrified trees standing up, running through all the layers. And the evolutionists want us to believe these layers are different ages. Guys, trees only going to stand around for a year or two after it dies. Petrified trees in the vertical position are found all over. And so I think it's pretty evidence all the layers formed in 1 year, like Noah's flood would do, tidal pumping. During the 7 months, Noah was in the ark floating until he hit bottom again. During those 7 months, he went through 880 tidal changes. The tide changed up, down 880 times in 7 months. I think the petrified trees that we find all over the world are petrified, standing up, sometimes upside down, running through multiple layers, are clear evidence the layers are all formed in 1 year in Noah's flood. So to answer your question, I don't know what they put in here. We can analyze it if you want, but I would guess it's several different sediment densities. Maybe one is iron, maybe one is aluminum, which has or copper. They have a different density. Whatever they use, I don't care. It works good.
Time, please. I would just like to ask for one topic at a time.
Yeah, I was just asking about the sand toy. I wasn't getting the rest of that.
Well, it's odd that you sort of use this as a demonstration, but you don't actually know any details about it.
Well, I actually would love to talk more about the petrified trees if you gentlemen are willing to engage that.
Sure.
Because...
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, my next question is actually regards to it. It's
all right, then Beamsy, take it away.
Preservation Ridge at Yellowstone National Park. They are actually 24 individual forests that are layers of mud silt, and then particularly they're buried in a deposit called tuff. Tuff is exclusively from volcanic ash. It cannot be formed any other way, and it cannot be moistened while it's actually still in its non-solid state. This could not happen if there was a global flood to create 24 individual layers. How would you explain that it goes a layer, then a layer of forest buried in volcanic ash, and it does that 24 times?
You muted yourself, Dr. Hoven, so I can't unmute you.
Am I muted? Okay, yeah.
Now you're
There are
unmuted.
27, if you're referring to Specimen Ridge, there are 27 consecutive layers at Yellowstone of forest, and the trees have the roots ripped off. They were ripped out, floating around in Noah's flood, and then redeposited, and you get the tidal pumping up and down, back and forth for 7 or 8 months. It's going to form hundreds of these layers with trees. Here's a petrified tree standing up. The bottom is in one seam of coal, then layers of rock above it, and then the second one, the top's in a different seam of coal. Did the tree stand there while growing out through one forest, and then waited till the mud settled, and then grew through another forest? And the most logical answer is the one you guys don't want. There was a global flood, and the tide going up and down 880 times, rushing in and out, It's going to form all the layers sideways. The geologic column does not exist. There is no such thing as a Cretaceous period or Jurassic. No such thing. All the layers formed in one flood. But I know that's your Bible, and you want badly to believe in that kind of stuff. But I think the layers are coal seams are nearly always found on top of layers of clay or rock. That's a pretty poor place to grow a forest. We got a gravel pit here. I live in the middle of one, 140 acres. Come on down. Stuff doesn't grow very good on the clay or rock. It has to have soil, but there's no soil between these layers. Anyway, polystratofossils, I think nobody's ever given a reasonable answer for how could this be a tree running through all these layers. There's lots of them, thousands of them probably. So I'd like an answer other than your imagination, SpongeBob world.
Beamsy?
I'm sorry, Mr. Hoven, but in regards to Specimen Ridge, there are roots attached to these trees. That's why you can recognize them as a forest. They were not ripped out like you would experience within Hope Lake. Hope Lake would be a good example of them being ripped up and then buried in a flood. These particular examples, the 24 that I'm referring to, are an established layer of silt, which has been lithified with roots settled inside of them. And then the problem with actually them being buried by a flood is the sediment that they're buried in is called tuff. Tuff is only exclusively from volcanic activity and exclusively the ash that comes from volcanic activity. It will not settle as anything other than tuff if it becomes moist. When water mixes with volcanic ash, it becomes a lahar. Lahar is set as slate, not tuff. So to actually get 24 concurrent forests, somehow you'd need to have sediment put down, then somehow the trees would have been put in somehow, and then a volcano would have to go off, bury it, and then it would have to repeat again. How would this have happened in a global flood? I do not see any logical way other than time for this to occur.
Let's let him answer.
Okay, so if he is saying that at Specimen Ridge, the 24, 27, whatever number you want to use, different layers, this is all tuff? Is that what you're saying? Are there any layers of other types of rock? Is there any sedimentary rock other than tuff? Is it all igneous or metamorphic? And why do we see, even at Specimen Ridge, trees going through several different layers? They're not just all contained in one layer. You have the very same problem, whether it's only 2 layers that it goes through or 20 layers that it goes through. You have the very same problem. The layers cannot be different ages, not by millions of years, maybe 6 months or so. We've got petrified tree in our science center here with bark still on it, petrified before the bark could fall off. I think you guys are crazy to believe that all these layers are different ages and they all form millions of years apart when we have trees connecting layers, even if it's only connecting 2 layers. They had to form quickly before the tree could rot and fall down. Talk to Ian Juby. He lives up there, ianjuby.org, where all the petrified trees at Joggins, Nova Scotia, petrified running through all these layers. So I think you're desperate to try to want to believe in evolution for maybe some other reason, but that you can't prove these layers are different ages. I think it's much more logical to say, wow, that tree stood there, all the tides going up and down, sucking water in and out and mud in and out, making all these layers in 1 year. Noah's flood. That's my answer.
All right, Beamsy. Well, I'm sorry, Beamsy. Hold that thought. Mark's trying to get in. Mark, I'm going to give it to you, bud.
Yeah, I just want to point out, like, you're not answering the question. He's saying that tuff, when it forms into tuff, which is volcanic ash that's been compressed, water makes it not form into tuff. And these trees, which you claim have been put there during the flood, they're in tuff. And if there's water, it would be shale, not tuff. So how do you explain that? That's the question. How do you explain this tuff forming when water would make it form into shale? But you claim that there was water that formed, that put these trees there. But that is impossible with the what mineral it's going through. That's what he's getting at.
Mark, if I could ask for clarification, are you saying in every single example that we've observed, every time it forms into tuff?
Yeah, so
every
volcanic
example?
ash. Yes. Volcanic ash, and this is what Beamsy's saying. Volcanic ash, if it is subject to water in any way, right? Water hits it, it will not become tough. It will become shale. That's what will happen. That's the physics of geology. That's what it will become. These trees that he's pointing out are in tuff, but he says that it got there by a flood. It's impossible.
All right, Dr. Hoven.
Well, I don't know that tuff always turns to shale when it gets wet. I don't know that for sure. I live near some volcanoes, and we used to get tuff all the time. But I think if the crust of the earth was flooded in Noah's time, like the Bible says, the crust would be flexing at about, because it's all broken up into pieces. It is still broken up into pieces. With the fault lines all over the world, the earth is broken up like an eggshell. And the plates of the earth within these fault lines would be flexing around. There might have been some area sticking up above the water during Noah's flood. Just because Noah was in the ark for a year does not mean the world is covered with water for a year. Some parts of it might only have been covered for a few weeks and then resubmerged and new layers form and then goes back up again. I don't know. I'll watch the video about Noah's flood when I get to heaven. But I think explaining everything with a flood of Noah, forming all these layers around standing trees, sometimes upside down, you guys never answer that one, upside down petrified trees, that is a much better explanation would be the Noah's flood forming these layers. And again, as I said, sometimes it might have come up above the water level, been dry for a few weeks or a few months, and new layers form on top of it. Might have been volcanoes going off because the crust of the earth was broken up. Nearly all the volcanoes today are around the fault lines, so maybe there's a connection there. So we'll have to watch the video when we get to heaven. But I don't think you've given a satisfactory answer to the petrified trees running through all the layers. Are all the layers of tuff different ages? Are these? Would you agree this tree on the right goes through, maybe pick a number, 20 different layers? Are all those 20 layers the same age or within a year?
All right, Mark.
Well, actually, the question was for you. Beamsy asked the question of you, and you never answered it. And there's no shale in there suggesting any water was there at all. So the whole thing of you haven't answered satisfactory. We asked you the question of how the tuff got there, and you didn't have an answer. I'm sure Beamsy can address the layers that it runs through, and most of the time they're not geological layers. They're not like layers of time that you're trying to suggest. Sometimes they're cast fossils there where the tree has died, rock has filled it, and you think it's a tree. It's actually rock in the shape of a tree because rock has filled the space where it used to be. So a lot of the times you're misunderstanding what you're actually looking at because it looks like a tree. It must be a tree, but that's not always the case. And there's a number of scenarios where it's not a tree. It's actually rock that's filled the hole left by a tree. But, you know, I'll let Beamsy add to that because he knows a lot more about it than I do, if you do want to, Beamsy.
Yeah, a lot of the cross-strata fossils are actually fossils of something called a lycopod. They can actually be growing while buried because they're closer to a fungus than they are to a tree, and they don't actually have solid branches. They're also hollow, so a lot of them get filled up. A few of the pictures you actually showed are actually of filled-in dikes, and one of them was actually an iron-encrusted uplift. I'm not sure what a few of them are. I'll actually have to take a closer look. But some of them are actually quite fascinating. Some of them I'd like to actually really have a good look at myself.
Okay, well, let's make it real simple. Let's get this picture right here. Let's take the one on the far right. Let's pick a number and say it's going through 20 consecutive layers. Would you all agree those 20 layers had to form in maybe a short time, like a year or so? They can't be millions of years different in age because the tree would have rotted beyond that layer. The top would have rotted off. So the fact that there's a tree standing up on the far right here going through, let's say 20 layers, would you agree those 20 layers had to have been deposited quickly in maybe 1 year or less before the tree could rot? Is that a reasonable answer or question?
Beamsy.
The one on the right's not a tree fossil.
You're saying the one on the right is not a tree?
It's a dike cast.
A what?
It's called a dike cast. No, it's a dike cast. It's literally a cast fossil that's been created because a separation has occurred within that sedimentary layer. It's basically a crack that has been filled with rubbish.
So it's a crack that got filled in the shape of a tree running through all these layers. And so if we see, I've got a lot of fossilized wood in our museum here. It has rings in it, and they're fossilized with rings, indicating certainly a tree. We have some with bark on them. Now, I agree it is possible for the tree to get stuck in mud, and then the tree completely rots and it's filled with some other material, and it forms a cast, as you mentioned, in the shape of the exact tree. That would be a cast fossil, I agree, but it doesn't solve the same problem. Are all those, it had to all form quickly before, and the tree had to rot out of that hole and filled with some other mineral and turn into a stone. And many fossils are cast fossils. I understand that, okay? But that's still the same problem. The layers are the same age. You guys wish to believe, but you get that slide. That's a cool one with David Reeves on it. Is that you, Steve?
That's my brother Achilles.
Oh, okay.
He's our tech guy.
Yeah. Well, my point would be whether it's a cast fossil or a petrified tree, which is, I guess, probably very similar, the same thing. It's still running through layers. And why won't you guys say, yes, we agree, those 20 layers had to form within 1 year or so before the tree could rot? Why can't you just admit I'm right?
All right, I'm going to give Mark the floor. He's trying to get in.
Yeah, so this is the problem. So the problem is that you're looking at things in pictures and going, it must be this. This isn't how we scientifically investigate anything. We don't just look at a picture and go, well, it must be a fill in the blank because, you know, that helps my case. What Beamsy's trying to get across is you'd have to actually examine these and find out what they are. Isn't enough just to say, hey, this picture looks like this? Because, yeah, the dike fossil, the dike cast on the right looks like a tree, but it's not a tree. That's the mistake that keeps getting made. And I see creationists doing this over and over and over. I mean, I saw T-Rock after a debate say, hey, this looks like a maple leaf, but it wasn't a maple leaf. It was a sweet gum leaf. The problem is you look at things and you say, it must be a this. What we try to do is avoid saying it must be anything and investigate to find out what it actually is. And that's the way science works. It isn't what you know from looking at it. It's what you actually find out when you do a rigorous and thorough investigation of all the evidence. And this is the problem. You look at things and just say, hey, well, it must have worked this way. It doesn't. Like, you know, we have all of this evidence to show that, hey, one on the right, it isn't actually a tree. What you think is strata is just laid down sediment piles. It's not actually millions of years that it's going through. Like Beamsy mentioned that some of them are prehistoric plants and not actually trees like you think they are. And they don't need to survive being open like trees do. So a lot of it is you looking at things and assuming a lot about what they are, but that's not what they are.
I mean, I don't think it's fair to say that he assumed, because Dr. Hovind didn't put all that evidence on the internet. He simply acquired it off of. I would say that the people on the field making these discoveries are the ones evaluating it and declaring that they're trees. And as they're the ones on the field, and Beamsy and I have to admit we haven't put our hands on it yet, I would have to go with that opinion. I mean, like you said, if
you could provide me with a peer-reviewed paper, that would be great on these trees.
All right.
Okay.
Dr. Hovind?
Here we go with the peer-reviewed. Okay. Am I live?
Yeah.
Dr. Don McDonald at, let's see, Torrey State University. He lives up near where these coal mines are and finds the petrified trees. I've talked to him a couple of times. There's his phone number. They are definitely trees, and they're running through different layers. They're mining a whole lot of coal up there, and we've got a piece in our science center, and you can see the bark is still on it. It's a tree, okay? It's a tree fossil. I'm sorry if this bothers you guys so bad, you got to come up with such a silly answer that, oh, it's not a tree. It just looks like a tree. The people who are finding them say it's a tree. The one at Yellowstone National Park, they got a fence around it, and it's clearly marked. This is a petrified tree standing up. Petrified tree, Yellowstone National Park. They think they're petrified trees at Yellowstone. Why don't you go correct them? March around Yellowstone and put up a sign. You guys are stupid.
Dr. Hovind, your hour with us is up now. You're welcome to stick around if you want to answer more questions or continue the dialogue, but your obligation is up, and I appreciate you being here.
Brother, I am beat. I've had a long day. I'll do this any day, but about an hour after my program is another hour. It's about all I can handle. So, yes, I want you guys to come down and visit Dinosaur Adventureland and see our place and show you some real science. God made everything in 6 days. That's the only way symbiotic relationships work. That's another whole debate right there. Okay.
If I may, Doc, the Proverbs guys team hopes to be there at the end of March, and I can't wait for us to all be together. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, why don't you guys all take these evolutionists on and finish the discussion and explain explain what a tree is.
All right,
thank you.
Dr. Hovind. Thank you so much for your
Okay.
time, brother.
Well, that's cool. Well, do you think you can explain the difference between a tree and a lycopod?
Thank you, sir.
I was just going to ask Stephen if he can actually bring up that picture with the three he had, and I can explain what all three of them are and how they actually occurred.
I can't. I didn't have it pulled up. I think you're talking about the thing that Brother Achilles had up.
No, the
that
one
right?
that Dr. Hovind had up, the one that showed the one that
Oh,
Achilles
I
had
don't.
up.
I don't have that one.
May I ask a question?
Well, the whole point that Beamsy's
No, Mark,
making is
wait a
that-
minute. Wait a minute. I haven't
Well,
had a
Beamsy-
single.
Let's keep it
Minute.
friendly, guys. We
Achilles
had
was
a
gonna-
we had a good productive talk, and I was
Okay.
very unbiased. I think you guys would agree. So let's just keep it
What's
cool.
that? There's something humming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Achilles was going to ask a question, so I'd like to hear what he has
Okay.
to say.
just a short question. First off, Bimsy, even though we have different opinions, respect from me, because there were no attacks in your speech. Any question that you asked, you believe in it, you believe in the answer, and that's totally respectful from my side. Mark, is there any way you can start an answer or a question to Ken Hovind without giving it a full introduction about who he is, who does he think he is?
I don't know what you're
why is
talking
he doing
about.
it this way? Why? I mean, he gives you a picture and you say, this is what you do. You take pictures and you judge from the picture. I mean, do you seriously believe he's doing that? Or is it just you doing this to aggravate me?
Okay,
Please,
so
answer.
yeah, so
If he gave you a video, you would say, "Oh, that's
I
video."
can't answer if you're talking. I
If
can't
he gives
answer
you
if
a
you're
picture,
talking.
you're like, "Oh, this is just a picture." I mean,
Is there supposed to be something pertinent in there somewhere? Yeah. So what I do is evaluate him on what his actions are and what he's been saying. I am evaluating his argument, and what he is saying is, exactly what he is doing. That's the thing that he made. But it's interesting to me that you don't have any problem with him saying that we're lying and we're trying to get our religion and we're trying to do this and trying to do that.
Right.
You don't have any problem with that, but you do have a problem with me saying, hey, you're assuming this is a tree when in fact it's a lycopod or it's a cast fossil or it is actually something else when we've gone and discovered and investigated and found it to be something else.
well,
Like,
okay.
I don't
Mark,
see-
I think,
Okay,
Mark, I
wait,
think if we're being
wait,
honest,
wait,
go
Justin,
ahead. Go ahead,
Also,
Achilles. Go ahead.
Mark, I want to say I accidentally removed your stream. I thought it was one of Dr. Hovind's. So if you want to add it back, you can, but it wasn't intentional. I promise.
Okay.
Okay.
The difference is that Ken Hovind has a problem with this, what he calls and we call a religion. When he says you, he's not referring to your character. He doesn't even know you from yesterday to say, this is what you always do, Mark. That is an attack. Okay? When he says that you are a God hater, comes at the end of all those arguments where he can see, he can sense and understand what the other party is talking about, and instead of bringing up points, to be specific, you are constantly trying to break down him for being a scientist. So the pictures that you got, he didn't just find them on the internet. There are many scientists behind them, but they are creationists and you will never accept them. So the more you will not accept it and you will say, this is what you do, you just proved that you know nothing of programming, where he only brings programming up to give you an example that similar code can exist in different programs. That's all he was trying to point out.
Okay,
I
we're
did
going
wanna-
through
I
a lot
wanted-
here. Just 1 second. I want to address some of this because you went through a
All right.
lot of talking points there, like a lot of different things. And this
Well,
is
let's
part of
all
the
try to
problem.
stay on one point.
It's
Yeah, and
always
so
the same. I just brought another
come on,
example.
Achilles, seriously, man,
It's
you
All right.
always
can't
the
keep
same.
making
All right,
more points.
Achilles, let him go. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so the idea to say, hey, you guys are a god denied, I don't deny that. I am a god. I deny the existence of God. Yeah, I don't deny that at all. But
It
you're
wasn't
sort
a
of saying,
secret.
hey, you're saying what?
It wasn't a secret that you deny God.
Sure, I don't have a problem with it. That's something that I am. But like the whole point is that when I sort of say, hey, you don't understand programming, you're like, oh, you said he doesn't. He admits he doesn't understand programming. He doesn't understand computers. He
Yeah,
says
but
he
that's
has a
your
hard time with.
argument. But that's
Come
your
on, can
argument,
I
Mark.
speak? Can I
That's
speak?
your argument, though.
I-
Your
All right,
argument is
Yeah,
against
this
an
is.
Look, all
example.
You're
right,
gonna
hold
have to
on,
mute
hold on.
Achilles. He's got no self-control.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
let
no,
you guys go one
absolutely.
at a time. And Achilles, I'll mute you first. I'll let Mark get his point, and then I'll mute him and let you talk. All right, Mark.
Okay, so this is the thing. Kent says that he has no experience with computers. He says that he doesn't understand programming. Like he says that he knows nothing about computers, so he has an IT guy do it. It's not sort of something that I'm just tossing out there to sort of hold against him. It is the fact that he doesn't understand how to do programming. The fact that you want to say, hey, you don't know that. He says it. Like seriously, and all of the things that I'm saying, like he says, oh, well, you're just trying to get your science
Well,
into
let's stay on
your
let's
religion
stay on the
into
programming point, one point at a time. You did the programming. That's a
Okay.
good one. So Achilles, I'm going to let you respond now to the programming point.
Okay. Okay. So I am a programmer. All right. And there is common code between all the Microsoft products. Okay. Kent Hovind is a very old man. When computers exploded, I do not expect him to be a programmer, but he understands that part which relates to DNA and how the argument of evolution is that because we see similarities, that means we evolved from a common ancestor. So he brings up that as an example. And your way to defend that is to tell him that he doesn't understand. I mean, I'm not saying that he doesn't admit he doesn't understand, but what he understands is good enough for what he is doing. So this is one example, though. I mean, we can, if you want, I swear I can do this with you. If you want to understand what I'm talking about, we can watch this stream today, and we can pause every time an insult flies out. And if we make it to less than 100,
Well, hold on. I want to try to stay on the coding though. So are you finished with the coding point? I'll let Mark get back in.
Sure. I want
All
Mark
right.
to understand what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. It's not, I don't have, and I don't, it's not like I want to do this. I'm just trying to make him understand what it is that I see. And I hope he does.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, so this is a straw man because it's not like I just said, hey, he doesn't understand programming and left it at that. That wasn't my argument. And I never said there wasn't common code in Microsoft. So that's something that you've absolutely straw manned me on. I never said that. What I said is that Microsoft code doesn't duplicate with mutations, with errors in order to replicate itself. It doesn't act like DNA does. And there's a big difference between Microsoft code and genetic code. There's a massive difference between that. There's no viral elements coming in from outside into Microsoft code. So that was my explanation. There are significant differences between the two. So it is a conflation between the two. I didn't just say you don't understand code, that's it. That is not what I said. I think that you have selective hearing. You're only hearing the part that you want to hear.
He's the second person this evening, though, that you accused of having selective hearing, Mark.
Well, we heard the first tiny little bit of what I said and ignored the entire rest of it. Like, what can I say?
All right,
Okay.
Achilles.
Okay. First off, you got the response about this on the fact that he agreed with you, and he said that programming is based on binary code, and DNA is quadinary code. So it is 4 times the complication than a binary code, which is 1 and 0, right? But what you actually said at the beginning, and I am sorry, I will accept what you're saying, even though I heard you, I will accept it because When I see a punch flying, then I get a little bit blinded to the rest. I mean, why should the punch be there to begin with at the intro? So what you actually said is, we know, and you can go back and watch it again, we know that there was not one creator between all the Microsoft products. There were multiple programmers. Now, if that is not evading the example that was only there to support the original argument, and you even evade the example, I don't know what is.
All right, Mark, I'll let you go, and then I'm going to get Dustin in because Dustin wants to go also.
So the thing was, he said there was a designer. It makes there is a designer. And I have a very specific reason for saying that, hey, there was multiple people on the Microsoft code. Because even if you show there was a designer, it doesn't get you to a god. And I can delve a bit deeper into that if you would like. So yeah, programming.
I would kind of like a further push on that. Why doesn't a designer prove God in the creation experience?
Right, because you're setting up a dichotomy, right? It's either natural or it is a god, and that's a false dichotomy. There are other examples of where it could be not natural but not a god, right? So if you have aliens that created DNA, that is not natural and it's not a god. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but you can't deductively get to a god because you're trying to set up this, well, if it's not natural, the only other option is a god, and that doesn't work, right? And that's basically at a very surface level, it's how dichotomies work and true dichotomies work.
I would respond to that, though, that if it were aliens that started life here, that would to us be a god. That is a creator. That is the entity that created us. How is that not a god?
Well, if your definition of God is aliens, then I don't know what to tell you. That's not my definition.
Well, I'm saying something to Earth that started life from nothing.
Well, hold on, Stephen. Just let me finish. My definition of a god would include a necessary agent somewhere, and aliens wouldn't be a necessary agent. You know, that isn't my definition of a god. Okay. I mean, if you want to call, little green men from Alpha Centauri god.
No. My point was if it's a foreign entity, there's no life here, and it drops life off here and begins the process of life. That thing created us. I mean, that's a god.
To you? Okay,
that's a god. That's the definition of God. Something created life out of nothing.
But that means if we discover how to travel to other solar systems or exoplanets and stuff and drop off life there, then we're gods.
What kind of hold on. What kind of life would you drop off that would eventually turn into what we have today?
Well, a gene-tailored, organism with a different DNA sequence than our own. Like we gene tailor something some far in the future, that would make us gods.
So you're saying something that's designed. So you're saying you would be a designer and a creator. Yeah. So to their perspective, you'd be a god. So you do get it.
Okay.
And this is what I was trying to explain to you before, Stephen, when I tried to explain that evolution doesn't need all the other stages because we can accept the fact being that a god created the first life. It can accept that.
Do you accept that?
I don't. I don't accept that. I accept different. I expect the Teotihuacana started the universe, but that's
right.
And I don't bring my own personal beliefs into it.
Right, but if you don't have the whole plan from start to finish, it's invalid to me. But I promised Dustin 5 minutes ago I'd get him in. Let me get Dustin in, and I'll circle back to being.
You guys have walked so far away from the original point. I don't even really want to try it.
Just really quickly. I don't have a problem if someone thinks that God is an alien. Okay, fine. I've got no problem with that. It's just not my definition. That's all.
Yeah, the only point that Stephen is making. Delete the word God and just add the word creator. The whole thing. You can call him a programmer when we're talking about code, right? Code cannot arrive by itself and then continue evolving. And I understand what you said about the false dichotomy or that this would be a faulty analogy. Okay, just So
Well-
I'm saying this so you understand what Stephen is trying to get to.
Right. My point
if it
is,
aliens, if it is aliens, and they seeded this planet as Bimsy might be of the impression that that's how it happened. For us, from our perspective, they are our creators, right? That's what Stephen is trying to say.
Look, well, if they say aliens, that just begs the question: did these aliens come about through evolution or through another alien creator, which could be divine?
Control
Let's
yourself, Bubblegum. Okay.
One layer.
Control yourself, buddy, please.
Hold
One
on.
layer of
Order in the court.
Yeah.
Well, I just point
I wouldn't mind
the
replying
obvious
to
here.
that. That's sort of an argument. The whole idea code cannot create itself is an argument from incredulity. It's sort of there's no sort of definitive evidence that code can't create
Have
itself.
we ever
It's just
observed it, though?
incredulous.
Have you
we ever?
observed it for
I
DNA?
mean, well,
we haven't observed
in-
it God or aliens.
guys,
either.
we can't all talk. So if one of us asks a question, let Mark answer, and then the next person asks a question. Mark, have we observed that?
We've observed novel code being sort of,
I mean, we've observed code creating itself.
If I could just finish, Stephen, if I could just finish. I'm not sure what you mean by itself, because there's always going to be some sort of cause to things. The question is whether that cause is a bubblegum, whether that cause is natural or it has been designed by somebody. And we don't see a designer either. We've never seen code being written by somebody for DNA. And that's the difference.
Well, we have seen other examples in nature, like crystal growing, where patterns have been replicated due to chemical intervention.
No, things like crystals.
Crystals grow naturally as well.
Yeah, so I mean, to a certain degree, yeah, we do see patterns replicating themselves in nature. And if you wanted to look at it from a certain perspective, you could consider a crystal growing the repeating pattern kind of like a code, because it conforms to its immediate environment, pressures, and its containing area.
I'm sorry, Dustin. You now have me completely geeking out because I spent the last 9 hours going through papers in regards to the experimentation with dolomite.
Yeah, I've been reading some stuff about that actually myself, Beamsy.
It's a pretty amazing discovery. I only learnt about it on Doc Dino's stream the other day. No, it was a Grayson stream the other day.
Mark, do you really think I quote unquote accidentally booted your stream, like validly?
Yeah.
Wait, I'm lost.
This is why nobody likes Australia. You guys act all
no, they're terrible. I keep telling people only Australians like Australia.
Well, that's the same for Americans. Don't feel bad.
Actually, other countries are fascinated. Japan is fascinated with American culture. So is a lot of other countries, actually.
And that's bizarre. With being just a short time after World War II, how much Japan loves us. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, but a lot of it is sort of a shift from thinking that the emperor was literally a god into that being disproven when he lost the war kind of thing. So I think a lot of it is we had this person that we thought was a god, and it certainly is not. So I can kind of understand that.
Stephen, if I may, after the war, the Japanese people were terribly disillusioned with their leadership that had caused them tremendous devastation to their country. And they actually probably did see us as a savior, they saw themselves as having been deceived by the military leadership of Japan, which caused them great devastation. So, explains
we are way off topic. I must admit. Maybe let's get back on topic. Up to you, Stephen. You're the moderator.
No, this is good. Achilles, Dustin, do one of you guys have a following line of questions for these gentlemen?
The issue that I have, though, is if you're going to observe this naturally reoccurring pattern with a base element that has the same number of electrons, Why haven't we seen parallel forms of life developing with silica base in evolution?
Well, it's because silica isn't the best for making chains. The whole point is that carbon is awesome for making chains and ring structures, I believe it is. So it's sort of saying, hey, why don't we see this happening in nature, just that the laws of nature don't accommodate it. And plus, I would add that any sort of other life that does form probably will be destroyed by the life that's already here. I mean, bacteria is voracious; it will go through anything. In fact, there's some forms of life that basically break down rock and eat rock. Lichen being one of them, it will actually destroy rock. So
aren't there certain worms that'll do that too?
I think so. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
that familiar with it, but I think there are sort of mineral laws. I can't forget the name. Benzie, do you know the name of that? It's like, oh god, I used to know the name of this. Organisms that eat rock.
Guys, I'm going to hop off of here, but I enjoyed it. It was a great night. Thank you for coming, Mark. Thank you for everybody.
Much love, Lucky and Ryan.
Yep, Lucky.
It is mineral.
She's been
Thanks,
sleeping.
Ryan.
Y'all have a blessed night.
Gastrolith. That's right.
Yeah.
Gastrolith.
Gastrolith,
Yeah.
Guys, for me, I'm staying, but it's 5:15 after midnight, so the sun is about to come up. So just don't hit me with ERVs or anything too deep. We can meet
I
a little
love you,
earlier.
Achilles.
Well, I'm not even supposed to debate because every time I even ask a question, Mark's audience says bias moderation. So
yeah, I don't mind questions so much. That's fine. I think last time when you were sort of putting monkeys over people said, I think that was a bit too much, Stephen. Honestly.
Well, here's the thing though. I really never have claimed to be an unbiased host. I'm absolutely biased. I'm a believing Christian. I believe the Lord Jesus Christ created us, and I don't keep it a secret, just like you don't keep it a secret that you don't believe in God.
I'm fine with it because if so the way that I look at it is that if you do have good arguments and logic and rationality, you don't need bias. Your arguments will carry themselves. So if you need to be biased and need to have somebody, sort of tipping the scales, then that right there should raise suspicion over why you need that.
Would an example of that be like when you're in a debate with Kent Hovind and bring up subtle little cheap shots, like personal attacks? Would that be a fair example of what you're referring to? Like when you have to rely on something besides your argument?
Yeah, Kent does that a lot. He brings up like sort of digs all the time. I agree.
He is a lot like a mirror. He kind of matches tone, like yourself.
I don't know about that. I think that I've seen a lot of people.
I know him personally.
Well, I mean, I've seen debates where a lot of people have sort of not done that, and he's sort of said his spiel about, if you believe that, you're crazy. Well, I mean, it's kind of like if you believe that you're crazy, it's kind of it's very, it is an ad hominem. It is sort of, I don't think Mr. Hovind's like, qualified to diagnose anybody's mental health state. I think that,
I mean, you don't think it would be fair, like through observation, to be able to deem some people are just off?
Yeah, it would be like me saying, "Hey, if you believe in a magical sky daddy, you're crazy." That would be the equivalent from our side.
Well, we've heard that many times. And
sure.
From me?
No, not from you.
No, you're actually pretty good about that, actually.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that all atheists are perfect. Like, there's atheists that will say that, and I strongly disagree when they say that as well. I think it's rude and obnoxious and horrible to do to people. But, Kent does that literally all the time. So, what are we talking about here?
Well, that didn't happen today. That didn't happen on the previous debate. And
he said if you believe that, you're crazy. He said that today.
He
Yeah,
did.
Oh.
He, in
but
fairness,
that's not it.
Achilles, he did say it was dumb. He did say
It
you
is
were
dumb.
stupid.
No, there's a
He,
difference. Dustin, if we, me and you discuss and you say something, I have the right, without attacking you, to say, Dustin, what you just said is very stupid. But
Really?
it doesn't call
You
you.
would just no, and I'm sure if I said to Kent that thing you believe is just stupid, you would just go, no, that's fine. That's a perfectly valid
I swear.
objection.
I
I'm sure
swear.
you would. Yeah,
No, I
sure,
swear.
Achilles. Yeah,
Listen,
I don't know
listen,
who you're trying to fool,
listen,
mate. I
Mark.
really don't.
Hey, listen. Truly, you know me. You know me. I'm not hiding behind an account. You know my name. I'm Achilles. I have my channel is since 2006. It's Achilles 7. So I'm swearing on that name that if you say to someone what you just said is stupid, I
Okay,
want to
I'll say
hear.
that next time
I
I'm in
want to
against
hear.
Kent. I'll
No,
just say
listen.
what
I
you
want to
said
hear
is
the reason
completely
why. I want to
stupid.
hear the reasoning. And
Hold
no,
on.
I
He
will
doesn't
not
give a
accuse
reason
you.
why.
Wait.
Hey,
I will
wait,
not
hold up.
accuse you then. I will not accuse you then that you called him stupid. There is a difference there. I talk with Steven and he says something and I tell him, dude, what you just said is hilarious. It's
I
very
don't
dumb.
I don't mind little attacks like your belief is stupid or you believe in Sky Daddy. Like I would rather that than like personal attacks like, hey, can't pay your taxes.
Right. No,
I never
Mark,
said
I
that.
will give him
I'm
that.
not
He
saying
never
you
did
did,
that.
but
He never
that
did
was
that. He never
all
does.
through your
Yeah.
comment section.
Yeah.
well, you can't
Yeah,
hold Mark accountable for that.
I
And
didn't
Mark
hold
really,
Mark accountable to that.
he doesn't like he really like. I mean, the ad homs that Mark does are nowhere near to. And let's not pretend like you don't do it, Mark. Okay, I mean it's
I do
veiled and
it.
it's.
I try not to.
I've called people
I
who
know.
believe in evolution mentally ill. Like I do it. We all do it. We all do it.
Yeah, that's not cool, man. Like that is
It is
not
it
cool.
is accurate though. Like it's borderline mental illness.
Really? Do you think you can diagnose somebody for mental illness? Do you think you're sort of are able to do that? Do you think you have the expertise in order to do that?
No, but I believe that
Um,
observational study is open to anyone, right? Or is that only closed to specialists?
Well, the problem is that you're saying, hey, they have a mental illness. You're not saying, hey, what they believe is wrong. And it's also calling sort of, 90% of the world, including other Christians, the same thing.
Yep.
So,
It's in the
you know,
drinking
I
water.
mean-
I agree with you.
yeah.
No,
So that's
Stephen,
definitely an
no,
insult
what Mark
and one
is
that
saying,
you're not even qualified in making. Like you're just basically saying it.
Well,
I actually
okay. So to
agree with
offer
sorry, Stephen, I
Mark's
agree with
making
what
a good
Mark
point
said.
right now, Stephen. I have to say.
There is a difference between saying you are mentally ill for believing that and saying what you believe in is stupid. Oh, this is the thin line that changes everything. Like this is not an attack to say that what you believe in, I find it to be stupid. Okay, but if you tell them that you are mentally ill for believing it, well, then they have the right to get aggravated and attack you back because you
that's
started it.
fair.
You hit the
That's
false
fair.
ones,
But that's
right?
fair. That's my whole point.
Yeah. As a host, I want not to be in a ring. I'm not a referee, to start, that's all.
Well, a lot of the evolutionists are on the spectrum. For example, are you on the spectrum, Mark? Because I feel you are on the
Yes.
To
spectrum.
be fair, I'm on the spectrum and I'm a creationist. So, I mean, that is irrelevant.
Bubblegum,
What?
come on, man. A little
Well,
more
I-
control,
I-
buddy. You don't have to ask the man if he thinks he's retarded.
Yeah, that
Okay,
was
come
off.
on.
That was
I'm
off.
not saying like that, but it does feel like Mark is on.
That wasn't an appropriate question, Mark. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, I'm very open about it. I certainly am. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of or anything to apologize for. It's just a thing. Like it's like saying, do you have like it's not even a mental illness. It's a neurological condition. So you might as well ask like, are you on the epilepsy spectrum? Yeah. Why would that be anything to do with what I've done or my mental state?
True. I don't know. That's why I booted him.
Okay. From the minute Kent Hovind left, I stopped paying too much attention on the chat. So was that on our chat? No, it's not.
No, that was on
I
Mark's
don't think
chat.
so.
Okay.
No, but I mean that was an example of personal opinion being fine.
Anyway, I think we actually made a good discussion right now. But I understand, Mark, that you're not doing what I accused you of doing. You're not doing it because you are a mean person. You are doing it because that is the only defense that exists. Instead of refuting the message, there must be some way of attacking the messenger. Now, you're not as bad as some clods out there who will take the time to talk about Thomas,
I
but
don't know what you're talking about right now. I have no idea.
really there is I mean, you have a legitimate point, you have a good response, but before you get to the response, the other side hears 5 different points that negate him as a character or as a scientist, and then you get to your point. So consider it a friendly
Yeah,
advice. It
Achilles,
would be
I want
better.
to be clear. I want to be really clear. I'm not taking advice from you. I'm sorry. I'm not.
How
Okay,
come?
I'm not, because I don't think that you give a good advice. I don't think you have salient points. I don't think you sort of accuse me of doing things and then have to walk back on it because I'm not actually doing those things. You think that
When
you've confirmed
Well,
all of these things about me by declaring it so. It's not so.
you can watch the stream with some
I
friend of
can.
yours
Yes.
and see who attacks who, but you already
Yeah.
know your method. You know it. All I'm doing
Okay.
is I'm
Stop
trying.
gaslighting. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. I know what I'm doing and I know sort of how I respond and I
Right.
back up everything that I say.
Yeah,
So
Why,
but
why are you getting
this
so
sort of thing
defensive
of,
now?
you know what you're doing, I could just say, hey, Achilles, you know what you're doing kind of thing. This is the thing. I can just say, hey, you're gaslighting. You know what you're doing.
let me complete my sentence. I told you that it's 5:30 to me,
Yeah,
so
I don't
please
care. I don't care.
allow me to
Don't tell
complete
me
my
what I'm trying to
sentence
do and
before
what I'm doing.
interrupting me. What I said, you know what you're doing. I mean, anyway,
And
you
let me take this
already.
opportunity because it's still streaming to his channel. Please subscribe to Proverbs Guys Ministries on YouTube. We would love to have you. Terrific. Now I will go ahead and remove his stream because I'm not a jerk. Yeah, you got too defensive in the end.
Yeah,
What I
Stephen,
was
what I would like to ask.
Stephen.
Oh, sorry. I will
what I
try.
was
I'll
telling
start
you.
again. Stephen, when it comes
Yes.
to the explanation of evolution, when you wanted me to explain it, did you want me to explain it from what is agreed upon at the start of the theory of biological evolution, or did you want me to actually start from the beginning of what you are representing as
Well,
theory of evolution?
to answer your question, let me ask you this question. How far back into the model can you go before you hit your first gap? Because that's what you're asking me to replace, right? Religion is much older than the scientific method that we use today. And for you to ask me to replace my religious beliefs on how we came into existence, I need you to present me a model in full. And I need you to do it without gaps. So how far back can we go before you hit the first gap? Let's start there.
I can get to one plank.
Really? So there's no gaps between any of the intermediates from us to ape. That's what I'm talking about. You don't even acknowledge your gaps.
Well, we do have nearly 11,000 individual fossils that we can actually go through in
All of which belong to 14 different specimens, correct? Roughly 14?
No, we have nearly about 2,000 to 3,000 individuals that we can go through.
Right, individual, but I'm asking how many different species? A lot of those are duplicates, right? A lot of those are from the same species. And I believe if you look into it, all of the specimens we found belong to one of those roughly 14 to 18 specimens.
The issue with using fossils for actually saying species
It
is...
didn't answer the question, though.
No, I'm just explaining why saying a fossil is a species. Do you know about lubrid snakes?
Nope. But what does that have to do with the gap that you can't explain?
No,
Tie it together for me.
No, I was explaining this because a lubrid snake are about 80% of the snakes out there. If you skin them and just take their skeleton, you cannot tell what species it is. You can only tell exclusively that it was a lubrid snake. Whereas it's the same thing that we have when looking at fossils. We might have 1,000 different specimens, and of them, they might represent 20 or 30 different clades. But of that, they might all be the same species, or they might not be. That's the biggest issue, because without muscles, skin, and all that, we cannot.
I don't know if you understand what you just admitted to me, but you just admitted to me from bone fragment, we can't identify difference in the different intermediate species that we've identified between us and ape. So how then can you say which group they belong to? Like, make my mind up for me, Beamsy.
Are you talking about, do you want the cladistic one or do you want the tech? Because...
All right, so here's the thing. You guys dig bones up out of the ground and you shift them and put them with other pieces, and you say that this is one of our common ancestors, but then you also just admitted to me, for instance, in the case of snakes, that if you cut it open, you cannot tell the difference from the skeletal structure. So which is it? Can you tell the difference and identify these pieces to where they belong, or can you not? You're saying both things, and both things can't be accurate. Do you understand that?
No, they're two different things.
I'm saying two different things. You're contradicting yourself.
No, I was talking about the aspect of the snake, looking at its skeleton.
Okay, but I didn't ask about the snake. You asked me about the origin of species, where life began, and I told you that you could start as far back before you come to a gap. And then you jumped over many gaps and said you can get all the way to plank-like, which is false because you skipped over so many gaps. So go back to where you hit your first gap, and let's start there.
Well, we can show that we are apes.
How?
That's the start one.
How?
Using taxonomy, we can actually recognize the similarity between us, the taxonomy of the... That's an orangutan. That's got nothing to do with it. We could recognize the taxonomy. Yeah, we got the taxonomy that is recognized between the individuals that we're finding within the fossil record. Also, the taxonomy of living taxa that we could recognize, and we can see how the progenitors have gone through the stages. We can also see through cousin and sister species that are still alive.
Then why have we only found 14 specimens of intermediate species between us and apes? Where are the rest? I want thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of small changed variations over millions of years is what you would expect to find. 14 significant changes over millions of years between us and ape? Dude, give me science. That is faith. And that's more faith than it takes for me to believe that Christ is my Lord and Savior.
Can you give me the cow that's between the aurochs and the bovidae of modern farms?
We have the bones for them. You don't
Yes,
have that. No, you don't. You have 14 specimens out of what should be thousands. And
but
you
that
make
represents
that
the exact same.
That's your first gap.
That's
Those
not a gap.
14 specimens do not fully represent your chain of ancestry. It does not.
But what we have within the taxa represents the same amount of information we have that shows
you have incomplete information. How can you then paint that picture? How?
We have the same amount of information of where we come from apes as we have that bovidae have come from aurochs.
Oh, are you talking about when they were comparing genes, the 98%, which they cherry picked? What was it? They left out 25% of ours and I think 16% of the apes, but you guys don't ever talk about that?
Do you understand the difference between population genetics what is the other one? Individual genetics and what is the third one?
You can't even identify it, and you're asking me to. Okay, so that's great.
I'm a geologist,
Now
so
let's
I'm
go.
going with
Let's
memory.
geology then. Okay, terrific. So let's go back to geology. You say that we have found thousands of specimens in the ground, all of which are represented within these 14 different models of the variations between us and apes. But then in the same conversation, you tell me if we split open different snakes from skeletal structure, you can't tell them apart. So how do you know which bones went where, since you cannot tell them apart?
No, that's not what I was explaining with the snake.
Okay, so the snake thing was totally irrelevant, and you were deflecting from the actual conversation, which was your first gap that you couldn't go past.
No, you were asking about in regards to species. And
I was
saying,
asking you to explain where we came from, and I said you could go back as far as the first gap, and then you tried to jump significantly over multiple gaps.
No, as I explained to you before, we have the same amount of evidence to show that we came from Australopithecus
Where's the
africanus.
evidence?
Fossil records. That's what we have.
Fossil records. Okay. And you can identify which bone goes in which one of the 14 specimens every time accurately.
We have articulated specimens.
Okay, so by articulated specimens, you mean that you have a specimen that you were able to jigsaw together and it came up with somewhat of a formatted working model. Because I was under the impression that the most complete model, which was Lucy, was still missing parts and it was a mixed breed.
No, Lucy is not the most complete. That one is only about the 8th or 9th now. If you want the most complete one, look up Littlefoot. You can even look at the excavation site and see that he is a fully articulated Australopithecus, and the skeleton itself is nearly 98% complete.
I'm not even getting into the issues with Littlefoot because that's a whole other can of worms, and that's also still jumping over the origin of life, which you still haven't explained, and I told you to go back to as far back as your first gap. So, okay,
But the
what is
origin
the
of
first
life-
ancestor from human, from what we are today? What's the first one?
It's something Darwinius.
Okay,
Again,
something Darwinian-esque. And that's the first jump from us to them?
No,
They must look
first,
exactly like us almost.
The first jump from that is Homo erectus. That's where we go back towards Australopithecus.
Okay, like what's right behind us? Like what did we...
Homo erectus.
Homo erectus. Okay. And we jumped straight from Homo erectus to us? There was no intermediates between us and Homo erectus? Just one morning, we woke up and started producing human?
Oh, have a look at some of the diversity that you can get from the Homo erectus. They have been...
It's not that much diversity. It's not enough to equate to what we have today, and you know that.
Are you
Everybody
kidding me?
knows that. Yes. Yes.
Have you seen the Hobbits? They're Homo
Hobbits,
erectus.
the movie?
No, they're referred to as hobbits. They are a Homo erectus that were actually found in the Javanese islands, and they barely come up to your hip height, and they are still classified as humans.
Yeah, you know what
There
you found?
are Homo erectus.
You found a unique creation that at one time existed and no longer exists. You know what that proves? Nothing, except that at one time that thing lived and it's similar. Congratulations, Beamsy. You should get a Nobel Peace Prize or Education Prize or something.
How is that a unique creation? Because they had all the indications that they were still human.
Right, but something being similar isn't the same, right?
They were tool users. They were actually making stone tools.
It what?
They were making stone tools. They were making use of flint and stone to make tools.
How do you know it was them?
Because they have been found in their burial sites.
Okay, but did you find it in their hands? Like, did you find them in the act of working? Or call me crazy, is it possible that at some point they might have been a human's pet, a very beloved pet, and maybe the human buried their pet? Or does it have to be that these monkeys were super smart?
Then
right, you don't know because you
humans?
can't observe it. You can't replicate it. You can't test it. It's a theory, my friend, a theory that's a faith. It's a religion. You have a religion.
But again, going back to the orbit of Pluto, in what we can see, test, and demonstrate, no one can test that with Pluto yet. So how is that proof that it's not science?
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I'm still waiting on the origins of life that you can't give me. But you want me to replace your I don't know with my Bible. Seems
I haven't
real
given you
legit.
an I don't know. I've been trying to
All
explain
you've
it.
given me is I don't knows because you can't get past the first jump. You have a huge gap that you can't explain.
No, you just aren't accepting the answers. That's the problem.
No, because there is no answer. What's the specimen between us and Homo erectus? There would have to be multiple jumps between us and Homo erectus. Homo erectus cannot just suddenly one day give birth to human. There has to be intermediates, and you know that. You know how it works. I shouldn't have to explain this to you. You're a geologist, supposedly.
Can you show me the steps from when the average height of the human went from 5'5" to 5'8"?
All right, guys, I'm done with people who don't have answers. I want to have real conversations. So if you don't have answers for your religion, don't come on Proverbs Guys Ministries panels. You're wasting my time. Simple. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. Like, bring answers, answer a real question, or leave. Just go.
It's always like that, man. There must be something, and the funny thing is that there are actually people who believe in evolution, but they want to hear the alternative. Like, if you prove to them and show them the lies that exist, they will change their mind. But those that come on panels like this, and especially after Kent Hovind, wherever he goes, they are the militant atheists. So they have methods. One of them is using he has the ad hominem tongue, like everything that comes out of his mouth is an attack. The other one
No.
will evade everything. The other one will give you another theory to counter the narrative that we have in textbooks of all over the planet. The other one will tell you, and how do we know that it's your God and not the Muslim God? They always they will evade the
I know. And Beansy is the very worst offender. Like, the very worst offender. He stands behind his faith because it's a religion. He stands behind it, but he won't ever answer the questions.
Yeah, yeah. That's like talking to, I don't know, maybe black holes are real. Now, to be fair to Bimsy, on a debate, I mind what Bimsy does less than what Mark does.
Why? That's interesting.
Yeah, because the viewer doesn't get so confused with so many attacks and different points and quickly geese galloping on different other things. Like, at least he sticks to a point until you bring the response to that point, where he then, whistles in the air and says, I didn't say that. But I kind of prefer it. He was respectful to Ken Hovind. There was no attack coming out of his mouth. And he gave some narratives. He got some responses. Veve, that was a Greek word. It's too late for me, and my translation program seems to be crashing. But he did say that that was not a tree, and you could even see the roots that it had at the bottom. And I was trying to get in at some point because no, that's not the reason I wanted to come in. But I would like Dr. Hovind to say that we found a lot of those trees upside down, and we know through drilling that people drilled for oil and they were going through vertical trees, and then they drilled right next and they went through another vertical tree, and many of them were backwards. So, okay, let's say that there is a chance that these are not horizontal different layers. Okay, how did it get backwards? So Mark today, just as to give a conclusion to this, came with a different response, with a different approach. I'm sorry. He said, today I will ask, what is your theory? What is your side? And when I get the response, then I will attack it with different methods. But he didn't even complete that. He went back to the same old narrative of attacking. This is not how it works. You don't even know. You don't know how it is. You're not.
Well, we cornered him. He was scared. It was fight or flight. I don't blame Mark. At least Mark will try to give an answer. Whereas Beamsy plays games, and it's very irritating the kind of games Beamsy plays because he cannot give a straight answer. He'll dance around it. For instance, he brought up the snake skeleton. But then when I said, well, what you're saying means we can't tell which bones go to which specimen, he then says, oh, well, the snake had nothing, the snake wasn't tied to that. Well, why'd you bring it up then?
Yeah, but that is a little bit easier to deal with, because you can prove, as we did before on the pre-show, you can prove to him that your original argument was this, and now you are refuting your original argument. So which is it? You can bring him to that spot. While with Mark, he has the tendency to talk for at least 5 minutes every time we unmute him. And in these 5 minutes, you don't know what to address first. And if you address the ad hominem part, he immediately turns around, interrupts you, and says, no, you did that first. You're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. So I think I would vote for Beamsy.
I would disagree. Beamsy,
I know.
have fun believing in your made-up science that has more gaps and holes than Swiss cheese.
They're friends, by the way. They're both in Australia. They're friends.
I don't know if Beamsy is Australian. He sounds like he has a sissy Southern British accent.
No,
like the Manly Brits live up and around Manchester. I would take this guy to live somewhere around London.
He's a friend of Mark. They're down there together.
Beamsy would be from New Zealand. He doesn't have an Australian accent.
I heard an Australian accent, to be honest.
Mm.
And I have New Zealander friends. Actually, I want to say something for New Zealand. It has the most extreme enduro riders per capita than any country in the world. The difference between enduro and extreme enduro is the reason people like me race. I don't enjoy racing in going around and around and around and around the same thing. I enjoy going through rivers, going down hills, going up hills, having hard stuff to battle. So when the course is over, I can turn to that mountain and say, I beat you. It's not about people, it's about nature. So there are some people all over the world where they enjoy this part of racing, and New Zealanders are the most per capita. So I have a lot of friends from New Zealand, and that accent that I heard was not a New Zealander's. I think he's Australian, but he can tell us next time.
Okay. Well, brother, I'm fine with wrapping this up now if you are. We both agree on creation.
Yeah, we can't debate it.
Well, there was very little debate going on tonight because no one from the evolution side brought a good argument. They brought regurgitated crap. Again, it was disappointing, really.
I did not expect anything better. There was a time in my life, and that's why I said I hold accountable those that still believe in evolution, because there came a moment in my life where I said, wait a minute, which one is true? So I heard a lot of debates. I watched a lot of videos of debates, and I made up my mind. So I saw what are their arguments, and there are no arguments. It's a religion, and it's a religion that requires miracles from the beginning all the way to the end. And in order for them to hide that fact, they have to bring lies, fallacies, attacks, because they have no points. They can say, well, everybody knows. Well, that's not proof. Well, the scientific consensus agrees. That's not proof.
That's not proof either.
Well, you're not a scientist. Have you published any peer-reviewed paper? That's the next,
And I don't care. I don't care if I get canceled for saying it. I will say it again. If you believe in all of that garbage without evidence on the terms that it's defined, it's a mental illness. If you reject that it's a religion, then it's a mental illness.
Oh, if you reject that it's a religion, then it's not a mental illness. No, the thing is, we are not doing this to make fun and to mock you. We are doing this to show you that if you have a creator, then this world belongs to him, and you, like us, should abide by his rules. We are doing this out of love, and we are spending time with people that we don't enjoy spending time with, but we must. Now, from
Dret is pleasant. I could spend a lot of time with Dret. By the way, hi, Dan.
Well, to be honest, I don't mean the persons. I mean arguing about evolution all the time. You know.
Hi,
Hello,
Dan. You've been getting your brakes done, it looks like? Or they changed? Yeah, change the brakes. I guess you're still having them changed. Okay.
Yeah, no, I did them, and I don't like grease.
How did you do, though? It was a
Greece
success?
is great. You should visit us.
Well, that grease, yes, I would love to be there. No, my hands are stained from dirt and mud, but yeah, petroleum grease, I don't.
Have you been watching this while you did that, Dan?
A good chunk of it.
What did you think?
So, I think Mark is credible mind. He does put in digs, but he even told me one time that no, that was different. No, never mind. Boop. No, and he's just got a very fast wit, and Kent is known for doing that, and so I think it's fair. But today, I mean, I give kudos to you. You were really on top of it. Last time you got criticism for just being biased.
I am, though. I'm totally biased.
Well, no, but instead of just like, that was your first debate. So you, you didn't know all the ins outs of buttons and all that good stuff. And I think you did 100% better.
Who, Bimsy? I'm sorry, I was in the chat. Who did better? Can you repeat that for me, Dan? You're muted.
You are very muted, Dan.
Oh, sorry, my 11-year-old was talking in my ear, and who loves the debates and all that stuff, but he's 11 and figuring out all those words that kind of sound a lot alike to potty words. So
I heard you said something about someone doing better. I didn't catch it though.
Oh, well, he told me I did better moderating.
Oh, okay. I will only disagree on the fact that I think he did great last time too. This time, because we have decided to do this again, and no other atheist had the guts to come in, and we saw that we're going to have to deal with Mark again, he was a little more patient, and I took my hands off and stayed in the chat, because if I didn't, I would immediately tell him that what you just did the first time you started talking is again an attack. And that wouldn't have worked right. But Stephen was fair last time as well. And we're about to upload maybe tomorrow an analysis of the debate. And when you watch it, you will see that there was a lot of patience in the hosts.
Oh no, my thought was when, Stephen seemed to really control one person at a time, and so last time, that's what I was saying, as a first debate, I could see he was, not to me it didn't seem like he was as quick on, okay guys, no, one at a time, let's have a cordial debate. And I think that's why it was probably better this time, is because of that.
Thank you, Dan. I did try to keep it a little more tight.
And that's why I didn't think it was biased last time. I thought it was more just like, he needs to do that button, like muting people when they're not talking. And I know you did that this time. And I think that's just, getting used to it. And getting your feet wet from the last time.
We learned a lot from the last experience. Yes, we picked up things that we can bring with us to future broadcasts.
Yeah, and as far as Mark, where he knew he was kind of the only show, he could have actually been worse, because then, but I think he did good too, even though, because it's hard not to, when you're in the heat of it, just like you were saying earlier, it's like, you don't mind somebody saying, I don't know what the quote was, like creatard or whatever you said, hearing stuff like that. I mean, that's just, and that might just be our way of speaking, but that's what that doesn't bother me at all. And but anyway, that's just me.
No, I mean, I agree. Like, I could care less about that. I mind personal attacks. Like, if you're making personal digs, and they know the difference. Like, you can attack someone's ideas and what they believe. That's all on the table. I don't care. But attacking, like, their past or who you think they are personally is totally irrelevant to evolution versus creation.
Well, if it's a debate on somebody's past, yeah, go for it. But yeah, this is
right. Exactly.
That homonyms don't have to do with that, and somebody could be a mass murderer, but that doesn't mean they can't debate on the color palette of artists. It's
right. And Dan, I'll just give you the first example from our night tonight. Before Mark came in, we were, Kent Hovind was answering some questions from Stephen. So Stephen asked him, why shouldn't we trust Darwin? And he started responding. So Mark comes in and he says, what you just did was attack someone who has died, which I don't consider ethical, but you can do as you please. Do you see?
Okay, yeah, I didn't hear. I did come in a little later. So
the reason.
Darwin is, we're not talking about Darwin's dad or Darwin's cat. This is Darwin.
Oh, I can talk about his ethics too. How many children lost their lives and lived a life as mentally handicapped because he wanted to create a superhuman, and he mated with his cousin, and he had 6 children. Out of them, 3 died and 3 lived terrible lives. So I can argue about his character, but the problem is that he gets taught in schools as some scientist, and he was not a scientist. He was not a scientist. Lyle was not a scientist. He was a lawyer, and he created the geologic column 300 years before we arrive at carbon dating. And they are in the textbooks as scientists. They are not. So if Kent Hovind has to go there, is A, because Stephen asked, B, because the textbooks he's attacking call him a genius.
Oh, that is true. Okay, now I see where you're coming from. Because, yeah, you say something bad about Darwin, and like with Mark, I think or somebody, they have the, Bigfoot, Jesus, or, something.
That's okay.
Yeah, against Jesus or God. But yeah, Darwin, he had some things that actually, part of his just his life had to do with, his theory. So
but my
I would
point,
say,
my point here, brother Dan, is that the first word that came out of Mark's mouth is to attack Kent Hovind as an unethical person because he speaks bad about someone who died. Well, Hitler died too, right? I mean, I can badmouth Hitler, right? Or is it unethical?
I mean, as someone half Hebrew, I have no issue with you talking about dead Hitler. Maybe I'm in the wrong. I'm biased. I mean, I've been accused of being biased a lot lately, so.
I'm sad that Hitler died. I wanted him alive so we can torture him.
I mean, I thought he should spend the rest of his life in a very small prison cell, but.
An oven.
Well, as Christians, even though that's what he deserved, we're called to give grace. And I think grace for someone like him would have been a very small jail cell for the rest of his life.
Well, there's a reason for hell, It is going to be an oven.
well, and then also Christians aren't called to give the judgment. That's the government that God put there to execute evildoers. And so I would not have pulled the trigger, but I think that's a thing that we are missing in our society is some.
I think we should torture them.
Well, that's not Christian, so I don't know where to go with that.
20, 30 million dead only from the ovens, not accounting the occupation of all the countries and how they all starved to death.
Could you imagine how many people could have been saved by that example, by the grace given to a monster like that? All in the name of Christ?
Well, if I go to heaven and I find Hitler there, I'm gonna live.
Well, that's I wouldn't say that. That is extreme. For all I know, I mean, I don't believe this is the case, so I'm not teaching heresy here. But for all I know, we get up there and somehow God's grace worked it out to where many people we didn't think would make it made it. I don't.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that, but I
don't see scripture for it, but
I kind of doubt that Hitler is one of them, though.
I seriously doubt it too. I'm just saying, like, if I got there and I saw him, I wouldn't turn around and be like, hell's got to be better. Like, if Hitler made it into heaven, could you imagine the type of company that's in hell? Dude.
I don't know, man. I don't know. But anyway, to the point, that's how some people like to argue. Immediately begin by attacking the ethics of the person they're debating. The next thing, they will attack their credibility. Then they will attack their knowledge.
Well,
about the arguments. Just
In my
about the
in my
arguments.
defense, I didn't make any personal attacks about Dan. Dan made all the personal attacks about me.
Well, that
And
that
so
of
as the dog
course
again.
you gave me a wrench. Now you're lucky I didn't kick you off the show.
With great power comes great responsibility. I don't think you've booted anybody yet, have you? Have you even timed someone out?
I didn't. I just commented that I saw the wrench and everybody better watch out. But
Dan, you've got to time somebody out. You can time them out for a minute. It's addicting. I look for people to get out of line.
You can practice on this chast sanctum that is Claude. You can practice there.
Yeah, go ahead and time Chast Sanctum out for a minute. It's great. You'll love it. Missing Mod, feel free to come join us.
Oh, yeah. I was
What
on
is
her
his
show
name?
earlier talking about the Bohemian Grove.
Oh, I heard part of that. That was fascinating stuff. You worked for Bohemian Grove.
You
I did.
what?
So are you saying that all the mock sacrifices and weird ceremonies, there's no truth to any of that?
No.
And I did say mock sacrifices.
Yeah, there's no mock sacrifices. Well, actually, no, it's the sacrifice, the cremation of care. And I told Missing Mod she could interview me on it. And so I already told her that. So that's not anything. But yeah.
I also would like to interview you on that, to be honest.
Well, you can have second,
Yep.
or do it together. And
I'll let her go first.
yeah, no, it was so cool. And that was one of the things that got me when, the whole Chris Jones thing, and then our other Alex Jones. And I was like, come on, guys. I actually got mad I wasn't mad, but it was like, I used to be able to look and watch the cremation of care, watch they have great speakers, both political, artistic.
Well, what was the deal with the creation of care? If it's not a mock sacrifice, why did it look eerily so?
Oh, well, they are cremating care. So once you come in, it's 3 weekends a year. And when you come into the Grove, you leave your business, you leave your cares outside the gate. I was telling Missing Mod, Stephanie, that there was a guy that got caught with a member, this guy that waited 18 years to get into the Grove and would have paid thousands of dollars just to be a member to start with, and then annual fees. And they escorted him out of the Grove because they caught him on his cell phone. So that's what that's all about.
But what was that bonfire in front of the giant statue and the person screaming? You're saying none of that is there? That giant statue is not there? The little lake and the place where they had none of that's there?
Lake. And
well, I thought it was like a little lake. It was like across from a lake where they were filming, I thought.
It's a man-made lake. So it's a really little pond for you guys that actually have water. In Northern California here, we don't have, once you get away from the bay, our rivers and lakes are like little puddles compared to the east. And
well, was that site that was on camera, was that real? The thing with the statue where the mock sacrifice was?
Yeah, the big owl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hollowed out. I've been inside of him yet. I don't know what it is. I've been inside of it. My brother used to do the lighting for years out of a company out of San Francisco. And yeah, he was a flaming liberal at the time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's now changed. He's now conservative once he got property.
You know what? Ownership changes from liberal to conservative. Once you own something, you turn real Republican. I've noticed that theme.
Oh, it did, especially when the but anyway, so and then there's more part-time workers out there during the summer than actual members. So there's not really and California, a lot of liberals. My dad, who worked there for like 35 years, was a lifetime Democrat.
But what was the deal with the statue location? I mean,
The
so
width?
if that thing was real, was the video of the fire and the fake sacrifice real?
Yeah, the fake sacrifice is a little bundle of like cloth or something, and that represents care.
What
It's
about the
called
scream?
the what?
Well, the video I saw there was screams, which I realized was probably to go along with the burning of the whatever you said it was.
Yeah, so no, they're really into theatrical. Now, I don't know what kind of religious stuff they do. They have a place down in San Francisco, but most of the guys are pretty non-religious that I dealt with, and so
Fascinating.
yeah.
So
So
I'll be honest though, like what you just described sounds eerily accurate to what's portrayed in the video, though. I mean, there's a giant owl and a mock sacrifice in front of the owl, and you said they burned something in the sack, which is, part of the show. And then like the synthetic fake screaming. I mean, that's a mock sacrifice, right?
correct. No, I mean it's a real sacrifice of care. So leave your cares out. One of their mottos is about the web of the what is that, weaving spiders, not something about just come in to relax. And yeah, so I don't know, since I was in there in the 60s and 70s. My dad was there from 40s on to the 80s, and so what it started out with, but I don't know, I wasn't there. But as for modern day, yeah, it's all theatrical.
Fascinating. Achilles, I see that you're exiting, and Doc Dino, thanks for joining, but honestly, we'll probably be wrapping up very soon.
Yeah, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
My wife,
well,
but
sorry to
I
hear
messed
that.
up doing the brakes. I couldn't compress the cylinders it took me about an hour. Then I broke a wrench, and so it took
What
me an
did you
all
do
day
to
thing.
what did you do to the brakes? Did you take the cylinders out and change the seals?
No, I just redid brakes, and then so when I was compressing the brake, it's a dual one, and it popped out the other one, and I had a heck of a time getting the other one back in.
The cylinder popped out.
Not all the way, but far enough that it wasn't compacting back or compressing back in. And then I broke a wrench and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, it can be very tough to put back once they are out of the first seal. It has two seals in there. Once they're out the first, then it can be pretty tough to put them back.
yeah, I remembered as I did it, because the first one went in so easy, which popped the other one out because it's a dual. My truck.
Do you have a bench press?
No, I got it in. I just used a couple C clamps. But I remembered in the back of my brain, because I have a friend who actually is mechanic on the Golden Gate Bridge for their vehicles. And I think in my back of my head, he was like, make sure you're easy. That was a couple years ago when he helped me do some brakes. But that was a booger.
The best way is to get something parallel in there that can compress both of them, and put a wrench and turn it. Oh, that's what you did, and you broke it, right?
That was for just getting the wheel off. I'm a landscaper. But the shop wanted $550 to do my front brakes, and then my buddy, who's the mechanic from Golden Gate Bridge, he does rock crawlers, and so he's down in a place called Hammers where they just crawl over boulders, and so he couldn't even answer the phone, the bum.
Yeah. Okay, I think we should end the stream because we can talk brakes anytime. Plus,
great job though. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. And plus, if we talk about the Bohemian Grove, we are stealing content from Missing Mod, who has booked you for an interview on the issue.
And I didn't say anything new. I mean, anything. Yeah, I didn't say anything new. So,
I want to know the people you met there. That's all I want to know.
oh, you'll have to wait for Missing Mod on that one.
Yeah, no
Or whoever.
spoilers. All right, everyone who is around, thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed even the break discussion and the calculus, how not to compress the pistons. And, and we seem to be enjoying poking holes in evolution. We must. So we're gonna have more of those. Hopefully, other atheists will wanna come in. Not always the same and the same. And we'll see you next time.
Wait, you can see one second. Are you there for a second?
Yep.
There we go. There's
Right.
a matchbox from the Bohemian Grove.
Oh, awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
I'll let you
I
back.
thought you were showing me. You were gonna show me the caliper. I thought.
All right. God bless you
All right.
guys.
God bless you, my man. I'll see you soon. So it looks like I'm the one that's going to end the stream at 6:30, 6:13 a.m. for me. I typed in the chat that I should go and get some sleep, and then Stephen bailed on me. So I'll end it. And let me check the comments what I missed. Oh, my dear. Okay. Yes, I saved him for you. You see? Have a great night, everyone. See you on next one. Bye, dear Steph.